If you look closely on Westminster Abbey in London, on the western tower of the famous cathedral are 10 statues. These represent 10 individuals who died under oppression and persecution from different continents, and they are from different Christian denominations. For example, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a Lutheran priest who died at the hands of the Nazis, is commemorated, as is Martin Luther King. However, another man on the Western Tower is Saint Maximilian Kolbe. Famously, Kolbe was a priest who volunteered to die within Auschwitz, the Nazi concentration camp, in the place of a stranger. Today we look at the remarkable story in the brutal execution of Maximilian Kolbe, the saint of Auschwitz, and remember to support our channel. Please make sure to subscribe. Born as Raymond Kolbe on the 8th of January 1894 in Poland, Maximilian was born to a rather modest family. His father was a weaver, his mother a midwife, and his father was an ethnic German. At the age of 12 he was allegedly visited by a vision of the Virgin Mary, and he stated, "That night I asked the Mother of God what was to become of me. Then she came to me holding 2 crowns, one white, the other red. She asked me if I was willing to accept either of these crowns. The white one meant that I should preserve in purity, and the red that I should become a martyr. I said I would accept them both." The following year he along with his brother left their homes to enroll in a Franciscan seminary, and it was in 1910 that he took the religious name Maximilian. In 1914 he took his final vows as a monk, and after a short period in Krakow, he went to study in Rome, gaining a doctorate in philosophy. However, during these studies the First World War broke out, with his father joining the Polish legions. His father was caught by the Russians after fighting for the Polish against the Russians, and at the age of 43 he was hanged for being a traitor. This had a large effect on Maximilian, and at the time during his studies he saw demonstrations against the Pope in Rome. In October 1917 he ordered the Militia Immaculate. Kolbe founded the group which today is still around, and it worked to convert sinners and enemies of the Catholic Church through the intercession of the Virgin Mary. Kolbe wanted the whole Franciscan order to be consecrated by an additional vow, however his ideas were never approved or adopted. In 1918 he ordained as a priest before returning to independent Poland and taught in Krakow. He was a very well respected member of the church and later founded a new Franciscan monastery, and he was very popular also. Between 1930 and 1936 he went on a number of missions to Asia, arriving in Shanghai. Here in China he failed to gain a following, and then he travelled on to Japan, founding a monastery there. He eventually returned to Poland in 1936 and started a radio station, where he was appointed a guardian of a monastery also in Poland. However, when Hitler came to power, it was very clear that he wanted to expand his territory, and he sought to build a Third Reich, a huge empire that spanned across most of Europe. It was clear that this included the subsequent invasion of Poland that came in September 1939. With this, the Second World War broke out, as the Wehrmacht's tanks rampaged across Poland, and Kolbe decided to remain inside his monastery. He was one of very few who stayed, and he organised the monastery to become a local hospital looking after soldiers. As the Nazis and the Germans took the local town, Kolbe was arrested on the 19th of September 1939, but was later released in December. He was asked to sign the Deutsche Volkliste, which was aimed to categorise people in terms of their desirability for the Nazis. For example, at the top of the list was the Volksdeutsche, known as the ethnic Germans, and at the bottom were those who were horrifically persecuted. If Kolbe signed this, he would have had similar rights to those German citizens, and he would have been given these rights in exchange for him consolidating his ethnic German ancestry from his father's side over his mother's Polish ancestry. Kolbe ultimately refused, and he continued to provide shelter inside his monastery. Here he housed many refugees who had fled Poland, fearing the Germans, including around 2,000 Jews who he hid in the friary from the Germans. The friars shared everything they had with the refugees, housing them, feeding them and clothing them, and they tried their best to keep them out of the hands of the Nazis. His monastery was allowed permission to continue to print literature, and Kolbe did publish anti-Nazi criticism. In one newspaper it said, "No one in the world can change truth. What we can do and should do is seek truth and to serve it when we have found it. The real conflict is the inner conflict. Beyond armies of occupation and the hecatombs of extermination camps, there are 2 enemies in the depth of every soul, good and evil, sin and love. And what use are these victories on the battlefield if we ourselves are defeated in our innermost personal selves. On the 17th of February 1941, Father Maximilian was arrested by the Nazis again, but this time for hiding Jewish people. This was rather treasonous by the laws of the Nazis, and he was held briefly in Pauillac prison, a rather formidable and violent prison, before he was transferred to Auschwitz. On the 28th of May he arrived at the concentration camp and was listed as prisoner number 16,607. Whilst here he was put to work and was placed inside of the work camp. He faced hard labour and was forced to carry heavy blocks of stone for the building of the crematoria, with the work being overseen by a vicious guard known as Bloody Crot. Kolbe was singled out by Crot for brutal treatment. For example, one time he was forced to run with heavy planks, and after he collapsed, an SS officer kicked him in the stomach and the face, and he was given 50 lashes. When Kolbe lost consciousness, he was left in the mud for the dead, and he was smuggled to the camp infirmary where he recovered. The doctor who treated him said, "I can say with certainty that during my 4 years at Auschwitz, I never saw such a sublime example of the love of God and one's neighbour." On the 15th of June 1941, he managed to write to his mother saying, "Dear Mama, at the end of the month of May I was transferred to the camp of Auschwitz. Everything is well in my regard, be tranquil about me and my health, because a good God is everywhere and provides for everything with love. It would be well that you do not write to me until you have received other news from me, because I do not know how long I will stay here." Prisoners at Auschwitz were slowly starved to death, being forced to work incredibly hard on very pitiful and tiny rations of food that would barely sustain a child. There was never a guarantee of food for prisoners. However, Kolbe regularly stood aside in favour of other prisoners in the lines for food, and he often shared his rations of soup and bread with other prisoners. In the evenings he rarely slept, and was often seen walking around the bunk, offering spiritual help for the prisoners, and it was noted how he continued to sacrifice himself. To prevent escapes, Auschwitz had a rule that if a man escaped, 10 men would be killed in retaliation for the escape. In July 1941, a man from Kolbe's bunker escaped. The deputy commander of Auschwitz ordered 10 men to be chosen to be starved to death in an underground bunker, and one of these men selected was Franciszek Gajowniczek. He cried out, "My wife, my children." At this point, Kolbe raised his hand and repeated, "I am a Catholic priest from Poland. I would like to take his place because he has a wife and children." Taken aback by Kolbe volunteering to be killed, his offer was accepted. The saved man later wrote, "I could only thank him with my eyes. I was stunned and could hardly grasp what was going on. The immensity of it, the condemned man to live, and someone else willingly and voluntarily offers his life for me. A stranger, is this some dream? I was put back in my place without having any time to say anything to Maximilian Kolbe. I was saved." The news quickly spread all around the camp, and it was the first and last time that such an incident had happened in the whole history of Auschwitz. The man later went on to survive Auschwitz and was even present at Kolbe's canonisation. Kolbe and the other 9 men were led away to an underground bunker, and they were to be starved to death. It was said that Kolbe led the men inside the bunker in prayer, singing hymns to Mary. When the guards checked the cell, Kolbe could be seen praying each time. It was said the 10 condemned to death went through terrible days. From the underground cell in which they were shut up there, continually arose the echoes of prayer. The man in charge of emptying the buckets always found them empty. First drove the prisoners to drink the contents. Since they had grown very weak, prayers were now only whispered. At every inspection, Father Kolbe was seen kneeling or standing as he looked cheerfully in the face of the SS men. Kolbe never asked for anything and did not complain. Rather, he encouraged the others, saying that the fugitive might be found and that they then would be freed. Even one of the SS guards called Kolbe a great man, and someone they had never seen the likes of within Auschwitz. 2 weeks passed inside the bunker, and one by one the 10 men slowly died of starvation, and the last one left was Maximilian Kolbe. The authorities felt that this was taking too long, and in a sadistic turn of events, the underground prison was needed for new prisoners. One day they brought in a German man named Bock, whose job it was to execute and kill Kolbe. As he entered the room, Kolbe, with a prayer on his lips, gave his arm to the executioner, who injected him with carbolic acid. Immediately after the SS men left, Kolbe was found leaning against a wall, with his face calm and radiant as he faced death. His death certificate timed his passing, at 12:30 on the 14th of August 1941. His body was then unceremoniously taken to the crematorium and burned like thousands inside the camp. Following the Second World War, the story of Maximilian Kolbe's acts inside the hell of Auschwitz were told to the world. He was recognised as a servant of God by the Holy See and was then canonised and beatified, becoming a saint and a martyr. Today he is remembered as a man who gave his life to save others, and within the depths of one of history's most evil places, Auschwitz, he inspired others to continue to live and not give up hope. He was a remarkable man of immense piety, bravery and inner strength. Once again, thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.